Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking about how Nintendo has finally and officially confirmed the existence of Nintendo Switch 2. It is happening, and so we're going to be diving further into this announcement, breaking it down, but also discussing some other details that have come out from Nintendo's financial earnings release that are telling us more about Switch 2, but also what their plans are for Switch 1 and this year, which also includes a now confirmed Nintendo Direct this June. There's a lot to get into, and I'm very excited to talk about it. But before going forward, let me ask that if you do enjoy my content, to please subscribe and hit that notification bell. So let's dive into the meat and potatoes here. Last night, 2:49 AM, Nintendo tweeted out this. This is Furukawa, president of Nintendo. We will make an announcement about the successor to Nintendo Switch within this fiscal year. It will have been over 9 years since we announced the existence of Nintendo Switch back in March 2015. We will be holding a Nintendo Direct this June regarding the Nintendo Switch software lineup for the latter half of 2024. But please be aware that there will be no mention of the Nintendo Switch successor during that presentation. So let's assess this bit by bit. With this first part here, they say, we will make an announcement about the successor to the Nintendo Switch within this fiscal year. What that means is that by the end of March 31st, 2025, Nintendo will have made some sort of official announcement regarding Nintendo Switch 2. In theory, they could wait until next year to tell us anything more about the console. And with just that line alone, I would be somewhat concerned. However, I would argue that by Nintendo making us aware of the console now, it's suggestive that they are preparing for some more significant details fairly soon. And in my opinion, the reason they're wording things in this way, saying within the fiscal year, it's more so about their secrecy. They are keeping things very close to the chest. It lines up with what we heard the other day when we talked about that report regarding Nintendo showcasing Switch 2 to manufacturers, but these manufacturers weren't actually shown the console. They were allowed to put their hands inside of a box and feel the console, but not actually see it. So this could just have more to do with Nintendo being overall more quiet about the console, as opposed to things being further out, but also admittedly, this could mean we may have to wait a bit longer. Continuing on though, they also say it will have been over 9 years since we announced the existence of Nintendo Switch back in March 2015. And that's something else worth noting here, that technically they told us about the NX, the codename for the Nintendo Switch, 2 years before its release. And yet here Nintendo has not even given us a codename. So that speaks to this idea that Nintendo just being a lot more quiet about this thing, keeping things closer to the chest. They haven't even told us about a codename. So you might consider that we may need to wait for a codename announcement, but I'm thinking that we're not even going to get a codename. We're just going to eventually get official details about the console with the trailer and such, and then eventually a presentation. But that presentation will not happen until after June, it looks like. Because here they say, we will be holding a Nintendo Direct this June regarding the Nintendo Switch software lineup for the latter half of 2024. Which just means Switch 1. Focusing on, obviously, July through December, and they're saying this now. They're saying to please be aware that there will be no mention of the Switch success during this presentation, because they want to keep expectations in check. They want people to go into that Direct and watch it for what it is, knowing that it's not going to be about Switch 2. Because now that Switch 2 has been officially acknowledged, all excitement, all hype is targeting in that direction. And so this is basically what Nintendo likes to do. Whenever they announce a Direct, they like to tell us what it's focusing on, so we can keep our expectations in check and know what we're getting ourselves into here. But still, it's quite fascinating that they are telling us about a Direct this far in advance. They didn't have to talk about this Direct now. They could have just announced the Direct whenever they would have in June, and then when they made that announcement said that this will just be about Switch 1. But this may have to do with Nintendo acknowledging that there is a lot of excitement for Switch 2, and they're trying to quell things going into this next Direct now. But also, maybe Nintendo felt it was best to announce their intent for a Direct this early because there has not been a general Direct yet, And they want to make it clear that there is still support coming to Nintendo Switch 1. They want it to be known that Nintendo Switch 1 still has things going on. That's what makes the most sense to me. I don't think this necessarily means that the next Direct in June is going to be a bigger, better Direct than most Directs, but I will say I do think this Direct most likely is going to be a full-scale general Direct. It's not going to be a partner showcase, it's likely not going to be just a mini, it's going to be the typical full Direct that will explain what's to come in the second half of the year. But we'll talk more about Nintendo Switch 1 in a moment, because there have actually been more details that have come out about Switch 2 from this earnings release event. So David Gibson said this on Twitter. In the results call, when asked if the next-gen console is brand new or Furukawa answered, Switch next model is the appropriate way to describe it. So here Mr. Gibson is talking about how Furukawa actually cut them off and said that Switch next model is the appropriate way to describe the next console, which basically tells us that the Switch 2 is going to be like a Switch 2. It's going to be a next generation, a follow-up to the Switch. It's not going to be something that's going to be a dramatic departure where they're doing something completely different. And it also likely means that the next model will have Switch as part of the name. How will they differentiate this console from the other Switches? That remains to be seen. But there are more interesting details that have come out from this financial earnings release. So Nintendo is forecasting a 19.3% drop in net sales. So this is interesting because I actually don't think that's that much of a drop off. And I've been thinking, oh okay, that means Switch 2 is going to come out at the end and really help sales. However, when we take a look at their forecast for hardware, it tells us another interesting story here that may very much be related. So, Switch sales have been trending downwards. They sold about 18 million in the prior fiscal year, and in this fiscal year that just ended, they sold 15.7 million, and now they're forecasting 13.5 in this next new one that we are currently in, which would be a 14% drop off year over year. Now, that's actually really good. That speaks very well for Nintendo's plans this year. And I think that's a little insane actually, because last year we had a lot of things of boosting sales. We had the Mario movie that was boosting the overall popularity of the Mario brand, which in turn would help sales for Mario, including the success of Mario Wonder that came out during the holiday. But then also we had the biggest release of the year in Tears of the Kingdom. All those things are not this year. For this current fiscal year, instead of Tears of the Kingdom releasing in May, we have Endless Ocean Luminous and Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door. Thousand Year Door is going to be a pretty good remake, but it's not going to compare to Tears of the Kingdom sales by any stretch of the imagination. So what will Nintendo do in this fiscal year to help sales match up relatively well to last year? Keep in mind that it's not just about the quality of content and support that will maintain sales, because naturally interest in a console is going to drop off year by year by year. Even last year with things like Tears of the Kingdom and Mario Wonder and more bundles than ever before, they still saw a drop off. And yet despite that, with less known killer apps like Tears of the Kingdom and Mario Wonder, they're forecasting a relatively minimal drop off. So to me what that suggests is that they actually have some pretty impressive things lined up for the second half of the year, and likely also some significant price drops. But the fact of the matter is, Nintendo's going to be saving their biggest projects for Switch 2. So they can't have anything like Tears of the Kingdom to help with sales for this year. So there may be some cool releases, but they're probably going to have to heavily rely on some price drops and discounts here to keep sales going. With still some surprising releases though, it's not just going to be price drops, they're going to need some good games as well. And maybe these price drops will also account for this interesting part with the net sales having a 19.3% drop. Now you might just say, well that's because they're forecasting less hardware sales, that's why they're forecasting less net sales. And that may very well be the case. But if that's the case, does that then suggest that they're not anticipating that Switch 2 will come in at the end of the fiscal year to boost sales? Could it be that we're looking at a scenario where Switch 2 will not even release by the end of March 2025? I would like to think otherwise. I would like to think we're getting the console by this point. As I said earlier, maybe they would not have even brought it up this soon had it not been in the cards. But here's something else to consider from earlier. President Furukawa is referring to the successor as the Switch Next model. So then, it's possible that Switch Next model, the successor to the Switch 2, may still be considered as part of this forecast in terms of hardware sales. I'd rather not think of it in that way, but it's possible they could be being a little sly with these numbers here, and that's how they're able to have this strong of a number despite being this late into the generation. Now, one more thing to point out that I think is interesting, assuming that this 13.5 million is strictly for Nintendo Switch 1, that would put Nintendo Switch 1 at above Nintendo DS sales. If we account for another 13 plus million, that would put us at 154, which interestingly, they're anticipating on having more sales than the total lifetime sales of Wii U in just this next year, the 8th year of the console. That's just impressive, and by the end of this fiscal year, Nintendo's anticipating that they will have the second best-selling console of all time, and right behind PS2 at 160 million, with a great chance of even passing that. Something to point out is that while Switch 2 may indeed be coming out relatively soon, within the next year or so, Switch will likely still be supported a bit beyond that, the same way Nintendo pushed 3DS for a couple years even though Switch came out. And so this, in my opinion, pretty much concretely suggests that the Switch will indeed eventually pass PS2 at 160 million and become the best-selling console of all time. It's been an amazing generation, but the next generation is on the way, and these are exciting times. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.